All right. Good evening, everyone. Let me see if I can. There, I caught it. That timer I use always plays that annoying alarm clock, and usually I forget to catch it. But welcome everyone to the Sunday night live stream, YouTube live. That's what I was looking for. So welcome everyone. Futures taking a big dump right now. Looks like we got Trump announced tariffs on EU and Mexico. So S&P futures dumping right now. But, the nice thing is Bitcoin still hanging around. So I expect the theme tomorrow to be very similar to, what does this do? What's that do? What does that do? Does that it says show comments on screen, on stage. How does that work? I'll play with it later. Anyway, I saw a new feature in the streaming software, shiny object. Anyway, Bitcoin holding up. Listen, to be honest, I kind of expected Bitcoin to heat up a little bit over the weekend. Typically what happens is, crypto, especially when crypto's in play, usually has bigger runs on the weekend simply because, people, there's nothing else to trade since the stock market's closed, but held all of its gains right at 118 right now. So, up 1% on the day, not exactly a big jump, but what I was going to say before I got distracted by the new feature was, I kind of expect tomorrow to be a lot like Friday. All of you guys on pre-market prep, kind of let me read you my notes. Right at the end of pre-market prep, my game plan for the day, and I followed through on that game plan of the day, was the top ideas from Oracle were any crypto stock that hits the Oracle signal. And a lot of you guys know my morning alert, the morning trade of the day was FTFT. In the morning, beautiful morning fader, by the way. Actually, let me share my screen and we'll go over that one because it was. I don't like that layout. That's the layout I want. There we go. So FTFT, a good one to talk about, especially for a setup for tomorrow. So this is really that textbook morning fader. Okay, so most morning faders gap up the night before. Now, a lot of you guys know how I feel about after hours trading. After hours trading for new traders, it should only be idea generation or exits. Okay. So that's my opinion for new traders in after hours. Idea generation, you watch it, you see what's running, and then also exits. Like say you hold a gapper, a stock that was, doing a VWAP hold pattern is great for gappers. And when I say gapper, that the idea behind a gapper is it's a stock that, you buy post 2 p.m., trends up into the close. And if it maintains its trend all afternoon, then you hold it overnight because we know, if you guys are here every week, we know that the trend continues overnight. That's why winners hold winners and losers hold losers. But coupled with one of my favorite trading quotes of winners hold winners and losers hold losers is the idea that the trend continues the next day. So what that means is if you've got a strongly uptrending stock all afternoon, that's the kind of stock you gap. Okay, you take it for a gapper, as we say, because if it closed strong, the odds are, nothing guaranteed, but the odds are it will continue that price action the next day and gap. Vice versa, if you're short bias, etc., stocks that fade into the close tend to maintain that trend as well. So you short, late day faders because odds are the next day the trend's going to continue and it's going to gap down. Now I kind of got off a little bit there, but the idea behind the morning fader is every day we've got 3, 4, 5 stocks that run in after hours and then just proceed to fade the entire rest of the night. And typically, since the trend continues the next day, they continue to fade the next morning. So FTFT is a good example of that. Now, this did not run in after hours, but it's the same concept. It took off at 4 a.m. So right at 4 a.m., gapped up. And actually, let me get rid of, or I'll leave my lines on. I'll just add a few more lines. So when I talk about the trend, I mean, it's exact in a morning fader. I mean, notice what this stock did all the way into the open. I mean, just every high was lower, every low was lower, like the trend was fading. So the way we trade that morning fader, and this was, again, my trade and my alert for Monday or for Friday morning, the way we trade that is we let it open because typically the morning fader is going to gap down at the open. Then you wait for the Oracle signal. In this instance, it was $2.39. So that entry hit roughly 9:45, perfect time of day for newbie traders. It basically hit 239 at about 9:43. Remember, the 9:45 is a window. It's not a precise time, it's a window. And the window is basically to avoid the market open. So then you can see beautiful morning fader, literally all pre-market low, 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 lower. Set the low on the opening candle at 220, hit the Oracle signal at 239. So in this trade setup, and the reason I'm going over this is, I'm not going over this because it was an amazing trade. I'm going over it because odds are we're going to see a very similar setup tomorrow. Every day we usually have one or two very solid morning faders. So I want you to remember this for tomorrow morning and basically every morning after. So now you've got your stop loss, which would be a breakdown of the opening candle low, basically 220. You got your entry from the Oracle algorithm of 239, and then this stock trended up pretty much the entire day, got a little sideways from 2 to 3 p.m., and then ran up to 4. Now, my goal was 3+, okay? So just great risk to reward. So in that trade plan that I sent out to everyone, I'm sure a lot of you guys traded it, was a 239 entry, 220 stop, so 20 cents of risk, and then a goal of 3+, so 60+ cents of upside. So just a classic 3-to-1 risk to reward type trade. Now, if you held for higher, congrats, well done. But if you strictly followed the plan that I sent out to members of the Daily Income Trader System, you had a beautiful 3-to-1 risk to reward trade. No stress, buy at 239, sell at 3+. If it had it gone against you, had it not worked, there would have been 20 cents of risk, just beautiful 3-to-1 risk to reward. So that being said, kind of where I started is based on what Bitcoin's doing and the S&P futures, I expect that we're probably going to have a lot of these Bitcoin plays running tomorrow. Now, those of you that get the weekend watch list, and I know I post it pretty much every week, but let me post it again. StocksToTrade / watch list. FTFT made it as a holdover. Okay. So definitely, get the watch list. FTFT was a holdover. And let me get the full list. ABVE, SGN, WKHS, and then also INKT. Now, I do want to briefly touch on INKT. What was the exact Oracle entry on this one? Let me bring it up here. I want to bring it. I think it was 2250. Does anybody remember the Oracle entry on INKT? I think it was 2250. There it is. I got it. There it is. 2295. Okay. So 2295. But what I want to focus on even more was that midday squeeze at 57. So beautiful entry, 2295, and immediately ran to 50+. But if you guys were on the Double Down webinar, we were ready for that 57 level. So let me jump back to that chart and zoom in here real quick. So right there, you can see my line right there, 57.01. So that was, and we kind of went over this on the double down. That was the real time squeeze point. Okay. And when I went over it live, when we talked about that 57 squeeze point, it was trading. Well, let me look. Okay. I sent this out at 11:52. Okay. Let me grab this here. Let me zoom in. So 11:52 a.m., very aggressive trade idea, but more on shorts all over Twitter saying old news on INKT. Now, of course, they said that and shorted that at $20. So they're only down 200% at that point. But panic pop, short margin call comes at 57. So that was at 11:52. Let me go to a 1 minute chart. I normally don't use 1 minute charts, but let's zoom in on 11:52. So the stock was trading at about 48.49 at that point, roughly 50. We'll call it roughly 50. So if you would have waited for that panic pop squeeze area of 57, you had plenty of time. You buy at 57, and then you had that second leg into the 70s almost immediately. So that's the beauty of capitalizing on all of these, the 57 break, the squeeze point, etc. So that being said, great alerts on FTFT, INKT from Oracle, as well as the squeeze point of 57 midday on INKT. So let me jump back over to the agenda here. So just kind of reviewing the week. NVIDIA hits 4 trillion. Those of you that watched my appearance on Schwab TV about a month ago, you can Google Tim Bohen Schwab TV. The host asked me for basically my favorite Mag 7 stock. That was about a month ago. I called out NVIDIA. I love NVIDIA. I've been holding it forever, and broke out to all-time highs. And really, I think it's just getting started at this point. So let me just recap. Indexes hit record highs this week, led by mega caps tech surge. NVIDIA became the first company ever to exceed a 4 trillion market cap, trading 2.8% higher on the week, which I know 2.8% in penny stocks is kind of like whatever, but man, that's impressive when you're talking about the biggest company in the history of the stock market up 2.8% in a week. That's impressive. We already went over FTFT. So that's the kind of the feature stock of the week going into tomorrow. Again, I think, now we'll see when the market opens up in the morning, but I expect the crypto related stocks to be strong again. All of you in the daily income trader system, remember you have that full list, that full spreadsheet watch list of all the crypto plays. Make sure you head over to your dashboard. You got the full list, sort them by volume, and the standard thing. Like the reason FTFT was my number one Friday morning, low float, crazy volume. I mean, I think FTFT traded like 40 million in pre-market on a 3 million float, and the average volume before Friday was like 80,000 shares the entire day. So FTFT, literal box checker. Oh, by the way, thank you to all of you on the weekend workshop. Had an amazing group on the weekend workshop this weekend. So Friday and Saturday, basically, I think I did 2.5 hours of education on Friday, and then almost 3 hours on Saturday. But just any of you that were on the weekend workshop, hat tip to you. Just a great group, man. It's always really fun when you got people that are really focused, like really, willing to give up that time to show up. But anyway, we went over the full game plan on FTFT, all the plays, So whether you get the watch list or you were on the weekend watch list, we went over all of those. And then, listen, NVIDIA, again, 4 trillion market cap. They're dominating chips, data center expansion, Middle East deals. And really, the nice thing about NVIDIA is I think it's safe from tariffs, okay? And that being said, Jensen Huang has launched, smart idea, launched their lower speed AI chip to sell to China. Good idea. Give them the crappy chips, hey. And that being said, I expect continued breakouts out of NVIDIA. Look for dips, though. Like if you don't have a long-term position in NVIDIA like I do, just wait for dips. You'll have to be patient, but you will get a dip at some point. And then FTFT. Let me run through the calendar, and then guys, I do need to get out of here kind of early. I got a workshop coming up at 8 o'clock as well. So let me just run through. We got the EU and Mexico tariffs. That's why futures are down. S&P 500, Bitcoin ripping, copper up. And let me just go through the rest of my notes. VIX continues to crater. That's for us in penny stocks, we don't really care about the VIX, but and then earnings next week. We got Tuesday, JPM, bunch of banks on Tuesday, JP Morgan, Citibank, Wells Fargo. Wednesday, Goldman Sachs earnings, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, Johnson & Johnson, T-Mobile, United Airlines, American Airlines. Thursday, Pepsi, Netflix, Interactive Brokers on Thursday. And then Friday, Schwab, 3M, Ally, and DJT. Interesting. DJT has earnings Friday. Plus, we got the CPI on Tuesday, the PPI on Wednesday, and retail sales on Thursday. And then just going through my notes, I think that's pretty much everything. So, okay. Oh, so one last thing. So I do have an 8 p.m. webinar going over flux. Okay. So when I started the webinar, I talked a lot about trading gappers, trading in the afternoon, etc. So if you're curious about how to trade in the afternoon, what we look for the VWAP hold high a day pattern, how we decide when to gap a play or just to day trade it. I'm giving a tour of the Flux algo at 8 p.m. So again, if you're struggling with the PDT, highly recommend trading in the afternoon because that kind of gives you an edge. If you don't like the crazy volatility at the market open, afternoon trading. If you're aware of the VWAP hold high a day pattern and how killer it is for overnight trades, or if your schedule, like maybe you're West Coast and you struggle to trade in the morning, there are a bunch of amazing trades every afternoon. If you go to the YouTube channel, you'll see I've got 10 years of videos talking about the VWAP hold high a day pattern. And since so many people struggle to detect it, I built an algorithm that actually looks for these stocks that are within that 4% band of VWAP based on other criteria, float rotation, whether it has news or not. And it just does all the math for you and then gives you afternoon alerts and then also tells you whether you should hold the stock overnight or just take a day trade. And it's really cool. The results have been amazing. But if you fit into one of those blocks, you're struggling with the PDT, you don't like the volatility of morning, you're in a different time zone and you struggle to get up in time to get that, I'll put a link in chat right now. So that webinar jam link, you'll see event webinar jam register 94. So if you're curious about the Flux algo, options too. The nice thing about Flux is a lot of the trades are optionable as well. So if you trade options, etc., also good for you. Or if you're curious about options, you can check out the webinar, mainly because, a lot of the penny stocks in the morning just don't have options. Like if you want to trade option on them, you can't. Tons of the flux plays do have options because there's a lot of higher price, mid cap, large cap stocks that show up on there. So that being said, everyone, I dropped the link. You can go to that webinar jam link. If you're curious, it's free. Check it out. It's just a tour of the system. And I think that's it. Normally I go half hour, 45 minutes, but I do need to get ready for that webinar. Thank you guys. Again, read in the morning. You all have the watch list. My primary focus, barring some sort of Bitcoin sell-off, is going to be a repeat of Friday. And again, the game plan on Friday was any any crypto-related stock that hits the Oracle signal. I expect a very similar game plan tomorrow. And like I said, all of you in the daily income trader system, you got the spreadsheet with all the crypto plays. Sort them by volume, look for float rotators, and then ideally ones that have catalysts. But when we have a hot sector, you don't necessarily need a catalyst. All right, guys, have a great day. And we will, for all of you, a lot of you are saying see you in the morning. I'll see you in the morning. So